think I'm just bouncing off what Mr. Rotimi has said. It involves carrying the major stakeholders along. And I mean that by saying, I said that by from offshooting the fact that co-creation goes beyond consultation or asking students for opinions after decisions have already been made, because most of the times that is what happens. So we see people go into the schools and you ask students, what are your opinions? What would you like? And all of that good stuff, right? But it's more about sharing power with them, right? It's more about allowing these young people to actively shape how learning happens to them, what safety looks like in their own schools, and how challenges are being addressed. So I am speaking of my experience working in northern Nigeria, and the truth is that young people already understand the realities of their schools beyond or better than anyone else. And that means that we have to take the conversation around co-creation way beyond inclusivity, right, to active participation, letting them be at the center of the engagement, letting them be at the center of the conversation, because these children know where the conflict starts. They know why students disengage. They know what makes learning feel unsafe or irrelevant, right? So when they are excluded from decision making, education system literally misses out a very critical insight. And we must move beyond that mindset of, oh, they're just children. They're just children, but they have a say. They have an agency. They want to be a part of it. And it takes me back to your question, Ru, about the policy on co-creation. Youth power is essential to the future of education, right? And this includes the challenges that the school face right now. Talk about violence, talk about insecurity, talk about displacement, talk about mental health pressure. All of these complex but yet daily lived experiences of the students dictate the fact that if we're going to create a holistic solution, then they have to be well carried along. Not only just us hearing about their opinions, but actually giving them responsibility to implement what they think is right for their schools. So yes, I think that's my answer to the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Oluwaseun. Thank you for sharing your perspectives from northern Nigeria, where you are based, and the need for the inclusion again of the students in co-creating education. Now, I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Rotimi, and we're going to go to schools. I mean, we're talking about education, and since schools is where most of this takes place, my question now is, how can schools intentionally position young people as co-designers of curriculum rather than passive recipients of knowledge? I mean, I know we have school owners, educators here, and they want to know how they can do this, moving from theory to practice.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, I think the very first thing that schools will begin to do is they can actually have a learning outcome audit or town hall meeting. They can do a student engagement seminar where students will be invited, and they get the opportunity to say, what is wrong with learning? What sucks about our school? What sucks about our teaching? What would you like to see? While we might think that, oh, they're going to say a lot of extreme things, or they're going to act and all that, the truth about it is, it must be learner-centered, learner-focused, and learner-embedded, So schools must begin to think about it. You can even have a student summit on subjects or curriculum redesign, and then that research and the audit will form a thesis of some sort where data can now be mined to say students don't like maths in the afternoon. Is there a way we could do something about that? Is there a way we could make sure that, we do something about even the people who facilitate the learning, which is more or less the educators or teachers? So this kind of specific deliberate meetings, forums, engagement can be a form of disposition that the school can begin to take, a departure from the hold, as it were. And I believe that when schools are brave enough to try to attempt this, there probably might be meaningful progress, even in the short term and ultimately in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rotimi, for your response to this question. I think it's very important here that you mentioned how schools can move beyond tokenism, right? And actually taking actions, giving examples of town halls with students. I'll ask this question now to Oluwaseun. Oluwaseun, from a safe school perspective, how does student safety influence young people's confidence to speak up, to participate, and co-create their learning experiences?
I think that's a fantastic question, Rohama, because student safety is literally the foundation of confidence and participation, right? So think about it this way, that you're building a house and then you have to do the work in the foundation to be able, for that foundation to be able to carry the entire structure. Student safety is that foundation. When we're talking about young people participating confidently in matters that concern them, right? We have to understand that young people cannot speak up, they cannot participate meaningfully or even co-create their learning when they feel unsafe. Whether that fear comes from bullying, or it comes from harsh discipline, or it comes from humiliation or any form of violence at all. In an unsafe school environment, literally children turn to silence as a coping mechanism. So you hear things like, let me give an instance. So I was at a school a couple of days ago, earlier this week, to train the student leaders. And in my engagement with the students, one of the things that I love to do at first is to just bounce ideas around with them, just so that I can get little information that can help me tailor my curriculum, my teaching guide for them. And one of the feedback that I got from the students was, Miss Yo, even if you train us, they don't listen to us. So there's nothing, this thing that you're training us for, it's not like it's going to be productive or effective anyway. So we'll just rather keep quiet. And that's a problem. That's a major problem, because they turn to silence as a form of coping mechanism. And the reality is that students have ideas and they have concerns, but they learn very quickly that speaking up can either attract ridicule or punishment or retaliation. So what would they do? They would withdraw. Now, in contrast, when schools intentionally build safety, so talk about clear safeguarding policies, talk about trusted teachers or conflict resolution systems, students begin to trust the environment, and that trust changes everything. All right. So I have seen students who were once afraid to raise their hands after going through after going through training and establishing this kind of structure within the school. They begin to speak up. They begin to lead mediation programs. They begin to join clubs, and contribute ideas about how their schools can be safer and more inclusive. All I'm trying to say is that safety shifts the power dynamic in learning. When young people know they won't be shamed or silenced, participation becomes less risky. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. It becomes much more meaningful. So they move from just following rules to actually helping shape those rules. So from a safe schools lens, safety is not us just trying to prevent harm or abuse or violence within the school. It is giving children the opportunity to feel confident enough to use their voice, to take ownership for their own learning, and just actively co-create the kind of education that works for them. I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely, Oluwaseun. That answers the question of promoting safe spaces for young people to be courageous enough and be able to co-create education. I thank you so much for that. My next question now is from Mr. Rotimi, and we are going to now talk about like the young people. I mean, Oluwaseun has already like talked about how we can create safe spaces for young people to be able to be courageous and embrace the opportunity that is being given to them. From your own experience preparing students for the future of work, what skills do young people already possess that schools often overlook, and how can education systems better amplify this trend?
So please, can you repeat the question?
Yes, I can. So I asked, from your experience preparing students for the future of work, what skills do young people already possess that schools often overlook, and how can education systems better amplify this trend?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. I think that if you look at when you say skills they possess, I would draw us back to the fact that everyone, especially the young ones, have what you call natural excellence. There are certain things they are naturally good at. You will almost call it their natural habitat. And so for some people, in that category, what is common denominator to them is play, right? And we must understand that play is not just youthful exuberance, it's not just on seriousness, it's not just being children. At that level, play itself is a skill. And you find out that it can be integrated to the creative process. Children have a very strong imagination, at their level. That is a skill. When we keep talking to adults that try to be creative, try to be innovative, the truth about it is a lot of them, they've actually allowed life to erase their imaginative power. But at the face of that point, you're finding that when students are in school, they have a huge deposit until something erodes it of imagination. There are many case studies of products out there that has actually been as a result of interaction with young ones. Talk about cereal, for example, right? You find out that some cereal making organizations, they bring children together to tell what type of flavor, what kind of crunchiness, what kind of coloring. Many documentaries are out there to show that at the point of product design and product testing, the people they brought in were not adults, were not cerebral. They brought even marshmallow. They brought in children. And the reason is because at that level, these people can give you first-hand information. They're telling you as it is. They've not been interrupted as such. So these are skills, inquisitiveness, critical thinking. They are asking questions. Sometimes we adults, we get irritated and we're not promoting the culture of asking questions. They can ask you, why is this so? Are we sure God is upstairs? What's under the earth? And then we keep shutting them out. And these are things that actually make them to think about their environment, raise their level of awareness, to even say, why is it that we don't have power? Why is it that we don't have roads? Why is it that we don't have this? And these things can spur them up, to providing support to all these aspects. So I think this helps answer that question.
Absolutely, this does answer the question, especially with regard to creativity by those impacting knowledge into the students. There's a need for creativity and not just routine kind of learning system in order for young people to be able to embrace change in the education system. Thank you so much, Mr. Rotimi, for that. Earlier on, I had talked about, the fact that we have 4 years to go with regards to the SDGs. And I believe that we have seen the recent statistics that shows that we rank very, very low as a country in achieving the SDGs. I mean, with over a third of our indicators regressing. So now, Oluwaseun, in your view, what role must education play, not just schooling, but values-based, in reversing this trend, especially for young people? What role must education play in reversing this trend, especially for young people?
Okay, Roma, please can you take the question again? What role does education play in reversing?
Yes, I said, what role must education play in reversing this trend of, Nigeria ranking low in the SDGs, especially with regards to SDG 4, especially for young people?
Oh, I think at the core of it, education is so important. I I strongly think that one of the reasons why we are ranking low, at least from what I've seen over the years, and I think I should also state the fact that we have a lot of young people advocating, talking about the SDGs, but we do not have as much implementation, and that's where education comes to play in this whole conversation, because education strongly equips young people to implement. So talk about training them on how to achieve these SDGs, talk about what their roles are in ensuring that we actually hit the targets that have been slated for the fulfillment of these SDGs, talk about the fact that it goes beyond just the classroom, it goes into the informal level of education as well. And I think that's a limitation that we have placed on ourselves, to think that the only people that can necessarily aid in pushing us forward towards the achievement of the SDGs in Nigeria has to be just those that are literate, right? But if we are going to be holistic about it and actually actively and seriously, intentionally work towards this, then we want to bring in all forms of all classes and categories of education. So both from the classroom, which I really love the answer that Mr. Rotimi gave a few minutes back about integrating play into the learning system of the students, but also take it out into the streets. How can we present the SDGs to the youth that is on the street, that doesn't even have a basic knowledge of what we're talking about? But yet, when we present this to them, okay, I think Muhammad just dropped off. Can everyone still hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Rotimi. I think she just dropped off. Hopefully she joins in. But yeah, just basically taking it and not limiting the achievement to what our learned colleagues can work on and work with, but dose it down to both formal. Thank you, Mr. Engineer Frank. Dose it down to both formal and informal setting, and giving everybody the right to some level of equity and playground to bring their own best work to the table, right? So education comes in through the ability of it to equip people, also to give them an agency, a voice, that whatever contribution that they can bring to the table is valuable regardless. I think just being able to bring all of these things into play would help us achieve and move forward with the actualization of the SDGs. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Oluwaseun. I quite agree with your submission with regards to accelerating our progress of SDGs. My question now is to Mr. Rotimi. My question now is to Mr. Rotimi. I mean, looking at Nigeria as a case study, we have insecurity, we have gender inequality, and we have youth exclusion slowing Nigeria's SDG progress. Now, in your own opinion, what role can government play? What role can government play in promoting quality education for underserved communities? What role can government? Hello, Mr. Rosemary, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Did you get my question, sir?
Sorry, I had a little glitch. Please, could you say it again?
So I mentioned that using Nigeria as a case study, we have some issues plaguing education, from insecurity to gender inequality, and the list goes on. Now, my question is, what role can government play in promoting quality education in Nigeria?
Well, looking at the role government could play, I think government is playing its role. The question is, how functional and effective is this role that government is playing? The the government should be a little bit more hands-on when it comes to enabling development, enabling the creative atmosphere. Sometimes we find out that in the course of administration in education, or in course of management of education, sometimes it looks like the regulators are the ones who are even standing in the way of advancement. I've had situations where, in the process of quality control or in school inspection, schools that have been able to even move the needle to advance in terms of processes, advance in terms of curriculum, advance in terms of even learning integration. The regulators themselves are the ones frowning against such. You can think about it when people have gone to the point of digitizing their processes so that if there's a form of inspection, it's easy to look at. That should naturally get a pat on the back. But sometimes the regulators will say, we want you to stay right. That's just to tell you that the government needs to realize that if they cannot be the ones driving the speed of change, they should actually be the ones clapping for those who are blazing the trail. And once that happens, then what it means is that you begin to see people who feel that there's permission to fly. But there's this subtle, unconscious tone where it looks like people are now trying to manage the level of acceleration in terms of development in education, and government can do something about open the doors, create a better leveler, encourage corporate citizens and corporate organizations to fund and support education at all levels. In some cases, you find out that even those who have gotten projects to fund and support education, especially the public space, there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of difficulty just to get to support, write a partnership letter, invite people to be a part of sometimes professional development sessions that is all paid for. You still find people stand in the way. Either they want some measure of kickback, or they say, you have to pay us for doing something for you for free. Those things are very discouraging. And it almost looks like there's no way you will do much by being transparent. So we need to find a way to balance that. Government has a heavy role to play in that. And then the posture, where you feel that, yes, the messaging is right. The government is saying, let's make this a national emergency, but not also let's make this a movement. And people will begin to see how they can bring in flexibility, calendar adjustment, all those kind of things. We've gone past the days where we'll just be on the calendar issue, don't resume early, don't resume after us, or don't close before us, don't close after us. The world has gone beyond calendar management. This is what I feel. Thank you.
that you shared with us. In fact, our co-speaker Oluwaseun actually said that you are speaking the truth, and it will be so good to see, a change in the approach and the posture of government, towards collaborating with other key stakeholders in promoting quality education. I believe that that would help to accelerate, our progress, especially with regards to the SDGs. We have two more questions here in the comment section before we bring it to a close. If there are any other questions from participants, please drop your question in the comment section. So I'm going to divide these two questions for our two speakers. So the first question here, I will give it to Oluwaseun, and then the second one will be to Mr. Rotimi. So this question is from Itiaku Gaba. It says, thank you very much for organizing this webinar. So for you, Oluwaseun, the question is, we are all living with the world, and we are all living, and the world has greatly changed with IT, like, with technology, and countries that have more access to technology have their education and economy growing faster than those with low access to ICT. Nigeria is one of them. Why are we not growing as we are calling ourselves as the giants of Africa? What can we do to make government understand this challenge? I think this is a very important question. Oluwaseun, did you get my question?
My sister, I got your question. Mr. Rotimi, I just want to say that thank you for talking about what you just spoke about, because you were spitting facts. I cannot tell you how frustrating it is to work as a social enterprise, and you literally are trying to play your own part in ensuring that there is progress in this space, and then you have to deal with the problem of facing the government who literally stand against you. And I started that way because it ties directly into this question that Mr. Garba asked. To be honest, I think that I'm a very realistic person. When I have to answer this kind of question, I just genuinely think that all of us, we know the answer to this question. And one of the very plenty answers is corruption, right? It is one of the reasons why we are where we are as a nation, right? So countries that have more access to ICT have their education and economy. And let me also clear this fact. We do have access to ICT. We have a reasonable amount of access to ICT. In fact, compared to a lot of other countries, Nigeria is actually still a giant of Africa when you think about the skills, the access to technology, and the human resource. I just think that we do not have the right atmosphere, the right environment that supports the growth that is needed in Nigeria. And one of the major factors to that is corruption and the lack of willpower on the end of our government. So take, for instance, an organization that is working to push and promote sustainable education in Nigeria, and they want to work with the school, and they have to get an approval from the board, that's the education board, and the education board is literally telling you to bring so amount of money. First off, I am doing this out of my pocket, and you're asking me to give you money to do what you're supposed to do. What that does to anybody that desires to play a part in the progress of a country like this is they get discouraged, and at the end of the day, they'll look for greener pasture, and then, before we know it, the entire human resource that we have. I was watching a video yesterday, and then the person was talking about how there are a lot of teachers in the UK that are doing amazing things, and these people, majority of them are Nigerian teachers, Nigerian citizens, right? So you see a migration of brilliance, of intelligence moved to a more acceptable environment because of the limitations that the lack of willpower of our country and our leaders have just placed on us as young people. But regardless of that, I think that the reason why we're having a meeting like this and having to equip educators like this is to still help people see that regardless of what we might face as a people, as a country, we still all have a role to play. So why are we corrupt? Because the heart of man is desperately wicked. I am a pastor and I cannot lie to you. The heart of man is desperately wicked. In fact, you know, it's easy for us to push this, oh, why are we corrupt, to the leaders until you find your, well, don't let me say you, but until a lot of us find ourselves in leadership positions and we see how people behave. They say that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You just can never tell how people react in the face and the presence of power and resources, right? So it still boils down to the fact that human beings are human beings. We're selfish people, but at the core of it, if you have a passion, you have a dream, you have a desire to see Nigeria become better, then you have a part to play. If you find yourself in a leadership position, be a person of integrity, do what you say you would do, deliver on your promises, and carry as many people like you along, you know, create the table. Most of the times, young people like myself, we are often on the other end, and I hate it so much because it's such a victim mentality. So you hear things like, oh, we don't have resources, oh, we don't have money. Is that true? Yes, it is true, but is that the end of the story? No. We can always break free from that mindset of, oh, because the government is not doing this to help us, then we will not do this to help ourselves in the little way that we can. And that's one of the beautiful qualities of Nigerians, right? We are very resilient. So if we call ourselves the giant of Africa, we just need to come together as often as we can to just keep pushing, do your part, play your part, discern your role, play your part, and do it, commit yourself to it, keep going. Of course, the limitations will be there. The government will stand against you at different points in time and you'll be frustrated. But the goal is that I have a dream, and this dream, no matter what happens, we're going to keep pushing. And I just do believe that one day, Nigeria will be better and we'll live up to that name, Giant of Africa. But we also cannot neglect the fact that there are a lot of things that are wrong, and we as a people individually also have our parts to play. And when we work together as a team, as one, then we can make a better country. That's what I think. That's what I think. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much,
Can I say
Oluwaseun.
something, Rama?
Yes, please. Yes, you can, sir.
Okay, so I think that it's important that starting from this meeting, and by extension to everyone who gets to hear this, and if we can, to as many people who have access to, we must ensure that we don't practice generalization. So when we say Nigeria is the giant of Africa, please understand, what verifies that fact? Are we giant of Africa in all ramifications? Not so. Because when we say giant of Africa, are we saying in all areas? Giant of Africa in voodoo, giant of Africa in magic, giant of Africa in jazz, giant of Africa in murder, giant of Africa in corruption. So we need to understand that it's specific. Who says we've even earned the title giant of Africa? We're putting Nigeria sometimes under pressure that we are not even aware of. And that's why we're not even practicing assessment in that way. However, one of the things that we need to realize, just like the question, so why are we corrupt, is the horrible fact is that corruption's worth and corruption works. If corruption does not work in our society, the way we've enabled it by messaging and storifying and celebrating it, it would not make us corrupt. If we look at the worth of corruption, every human being will do what matters most to them. And you find out that for some people, they say it works. being good sometimes in our society does not work. And that itself is the reason why a lot of people are corrupt. So what can rescue people is when they now begin to understand they need to sign up for the values that they not just hear, see, and like, but that they understand will deliver the vision they have for themselves, for their enterprise, for their careers. Only then will value infusion help people behave right? Every other thing like leadership, all those other things, they actually will be reinforced, right, based on the values that we have. But basically, when you talk about the generality of people, it is because corruption's worth is high. That is WORTH. The worth of corruption is high. And in most climes, corruption works. If we tackle these two, we'll begin to see a decline. People will see an alternative. They'll be bold enough to do the right thing because the right thing now begins to work and the right thing has a huge level of worth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rotimi. This question, the second question is for you. And whilst you're responding to this question, please can also give your closing remarks, and then Oluwaseun will also give hers. So the second question is saying, why the frequent change in curriculum in Nigeria? We know that it needs, we know that it needs, but that brings the changes. But let's look at our environment and make advocacy on relevant curriculum. We need vocational trainings in schools, as in China, agriculture. English is compulsory, but agriculture is optional. So the person saying the curriculum here is not reflecting our environment, basically. So why? Mr. Rotimi, did you get my question?
All right, call came into my phone. Yes, please repeat the question.
Okay, so the second question is saying why the frequent change in curriculum in Nigeria? We know that it needs, but that brings the change. But let's look at our environment and make advocacy on relevant curriculum. So let's give an example that we need vocational training.
I think that
English is compulsory, but agriculture is optional.
I think that curriculum change or curriculum review and redesign should be welcomed. When people say curriculum keeps changing, education is such a concept that requires frequent change. We need to be rethinking our curriculum from time to time. The world keeps changing, so we need to change in that direction. However, I think it's high time we stop this common denominator within the education that we practice in Nigeria. A centralized education model does not work, right? A centralized education model weakens advancement, weakens growth. That is very important to note. A central education will make everybody want to co-opt together. That's why you're saying, why is agriculture not? Who said agriculture must? And who said agriculture shouldn't? We need to realize that every zone, especially, for example, in Nigeria, has their peculiarity, has their edge, has their advantage. So it shouldn't be strange if what they are learning and what they are doing is tilted from a strength perspective. Instead of us trying to push a we-centric nomad behavior, we should be able to begin to crystallize into strength, right? Learn everything you can, but stop making everything compulsory as a common denominator. That's what I believe, because we don't even have the quotient as at now. It is something we can evolve into, but let's face the fact, what can we do right now to have a functional education? It means we must put functionality first. Functionality means that we must look at it at what we work for these people. That's why, for example, you can't say everybody should be taught in English, because for some areas that will slow them down and they will not catch up easily. So these are the things that we need to start thinking about. The system that we got from the colonial era, right, was good enough for a particular industrial era. The world we live in today needs us to think in a different way, and our systems for education must be redesigned as much as our model of education. Thank you.
Remarks, and then Oluwaseun will also give her. Thank you. Hello, Mr. Rotimi. Please also give your closing remarks so that Oluwaseun can also give hers, and then I make some announcements before we close.
Okay, thank you very much. My closing remark would be that as we celebrate International Day of Education, we need to understand that we should celebrate the purpose of education as well. We should go back to our drawing boards as individuals, educators, strategists, and all that we represent within the sector, and begin to rethink how education is delivered. This would actually be a practical step towards lasting change where everybody now begins to realize that we're not trying to uphold status quo. We need to even destroy the word status quo so that we can actually have something that delivers on its promise. So congratulations everyone for today, and thank you all for those who have joined us. And we're looking forward to an education that is truly functional. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rotimi. Oluwaseun, please, in just 30 seconds, let's hear your closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Roma. I think that at the heart of education reform is one simple truth, and it is that young people already have the insight and the energy to help shape the kind of schools that we want, the kind of educational system that we want. And our role is simply to protect them, to equip them with the skills, and to also create the space for their voices to be heard, for their voices to actually create change. And when we do that, schools then can become places of growth and places where these children can actually learn and thrive, and as such would also see a positive impact in the kind of educational system that we have as a nation. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, Oluwaseun, for that closing remark, and thank you for joining us for this International Day of Education webinar. And before we round up, I'll just want to say something. One thing that keeps coming up in the conversation that we've had today around education is the need for collaboration, bringing schools, educators, parents, young people into the same room. And that's why I'm very excited to announce this initiative, that is the All Northern School Conference that is scheduled to hold in May in Kano State. Now, the All Northern School Conference is themed repositioning Northern schools for innovation, sustainability, and impact. So it means that we are moving from survival to structure, from tradition to transformation, from dependence to sustainability, and from potential to performance. And this is more than just a conference, it's a movement where we're going to have participants from 19 northern states in Nigeria converge to discuss what is most important with positioning schools in northern region. And we know that when we reposition the region, then we reposition the future. Now, to register, the link will now be in the chat section. Also, please follow the All Northern Schools Conference on social media, and also Team Masters on Instagram. So on Instagram, you can check for Team Masters Limited, and on Instagram, also follow All Northern Schools Conference. So to register, here's the link to register for the All Northern Schools Conference. And please spread the word, and I'm sure that we'll see everyone here at this All Northern Schools Conference in May 2026. Now, on behalf of Team Masters Global, we say thank you to our speakers and, of course, our participants for joining this important conversation to commemorate the International Day of Education. Thank you so much for joining this webinar, and I'm sure we have great take-home points. Do have a great evening. Thank you. Thank you very much.